So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end as per Yirmiyahu the prophet. We find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste from many centuries. Reading then from this chapter, we then establish layers of understanding, then with the Yirmiyahu the prophet and Daniel, and then also Ezekiel, where then the first chapter in Ezekiel gives us the machine with the many kinds of circles indicating the synchronisms of many events taking place at the same time. But let's then establish another point of understanding regarding then Daniel the 11th chapter, where we find then the layer related with the Gentiles and then the military leadership of the Soviet Union. It's a very important topic because at this point in time there is yet a forward motion regarding then the Middle East and the extension of these 1,000 years of deceit. As far as we can read from Daniel the 11th chapter, what should we establish as then the forward motion of the Soviet Union? So let's then make sure we read, for instance, chapter 1:4, where it states, "Then later on the kingdom of the north shall certainly come with a great army and much equipment." Truly gives us the indication of later on the Soviet Union becoming a very huge great army. And what about our time, where we are at? We are then Daniel the 11th chapter and verse 8, where we find then the entrance of Egypt and the importance of Egypt then receive arms from the Soviet Union. So then those layers related with 9, 10th, 11th, 12th until it reaches verse 1:4, and then we can establish the other events taking place simultaneously. There is, however, a very important news regarding then the eastern part of Ukraine. They are establishing a voting system, so then they're going to become participants of the Soviet Union, or then Moscow. And this truly is a very wise situation, because these people are going to win the entire situation, because Ukraine must be joined once again and becoming the great Soviet Union, and then at some point in time, in a gradual and temperate understanding, they're going to be taking over the leadership of the United States. So what do we understand as far as this great nation? Why should then the U.S. retrieve and the forces of the Soviet Union then take over? It's a very simple understanding, and it starts then in 1009. What was the most important event of the 1009? Jerusalem was invaded, and then the Muslims, for the first time, they destroyed the tomb from where the Messiah came from. It was the first time in history of the 1,000 years where the Messiah reigned in his holy cities and giving directives to the nations, was the first time. Then the tomb was destroyed. The existing tomb in the land of Israel is not the tomb from where the Messiah came from. It was another place. So then we can understand what went on during this time, where then this tomb was destroyed by the Muslims, and then for the first time they indicated the cities were no more. and then started a new world order, because they had to come up with an order of their own, because the cities were no more. That's why then later on, when we read Yeshayahu chapter 1:8, you find then the holy cities laid waste for many centuries, linked with the 61st chapter. But what should we then understand as far as the Soviet Union? Why should then the Soviets make a big comeback and taken over the place of the United States? It's because of the economy of the East. The economy of the East started out as a place from where Shaliach Shaul, many centuries ago, he was involved in teaching the people, those Jews, those Hebrews that were outside of Jerusalem, when then Ruach HaKodesh became then part of the congregation. As Shaliach Shaul went out and he was then proclaiming the spring feast was then completed, then the place where he was at in Asia Minor became prosperous, because for many centuries they obeyed the directives of the holy cities. As they did, prosperity was a byproduct. As a byproduct of these obedience, then what do we understand of the restoration period? During the time of the 1,000 years of the East, the seat, and then the East was obviously very prosperous. But then Nahashatan decided he could make a system very similar of what was done in the East. So then he migrated to the West. And in the West, he tried then to come up with his own system. Thus then the system of 1,000 years of deceit, where then the holy miltha that should be given only to those who are righteous, and the Mashiach then was obviously opened and was scoundrelized. And with these impeded miltha, then he decided to go to the West and tried once again come up with his own system. Then we find 2009 came over and the 1,000 years of deceit then expired. So China leads the world today, 57% of the world's economy. China truly leads. And then China and the United States, they are not compatible. You have a power from the East and a power from the West. And very obviously the power of the West is waning and waning and waning, and nearly has no economy anymore to survive this time of the restoration period. Thus then the Soviets are making a comeback, so then they can protect the trade worldwide coming from China. This was divinely given. You can read this information on Daniel the 11th chapter. And because of this, then the Soviets must unite themselves as they were before, and they must become higher than the former, as per the instructions. Then, as far as we can understand, there is a voting going on in the East Ukraine, so then this movement is going to win the entire country of Ukraine. They will, you can be sure of it. They're going to make a vote, they're going to win, other people are going to join them until the whole Soviet Union then is back. As it was then, there is a period of time of this situation, of completion of this layer of understanding. And roughly 35 months is the time where then the Soviet Union should return and then making a huge comeback. This window of time will give the other nations time enough for restructuring or then infrastructuring projects, so then they can handle the amount of trade and prosperity coming. This is what is coming via the holy instructions. So this period of time, until the Soviets are ready, is for the nations then to adjust themselves and then make sure their infrastructure is then exercised, so then they can get the ports and airports and railroads and roads fixed up, so then the people can receive their packages. Until then, we have lots of other layers we should study, because also Africa is heavily involved with the 11th chapter of Daniel. So much so that when we read, for instance, the establishment of the vision, you find then in the other chapter then the fortified city. It is the utmost importance for the African people to become the experts of the layers of these chapters. In fact, when we read the Holy Instructions, you find those who are then absolutely pushing for the establishment of the vision are the very violent ones beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. Amazingly, what this gives us is the Africans are becoming experts in layering the Holy Instructions. That's why then later on they say it must be established this vision. And until then, as we can read from the Holy Instructions, we have 35 months. Then from the establishment of this understanding, and then the violent ones, the establishment of the vision, and then the fortified city. It's not very easy calculating this period of time. But because of the layers of the East, and then also the waning down of the West, you find then won't be very long after 36 months. And we were in this position before. A couple of years ago plus, mentioned many times, the Chinese system is coming, the Chinese system is coming, and the Chinese system is coming. And sure, within the period of time, it did. Amazingly, it did. And there was a period of time beyond these, and then the understanding of those sections of infrastructure. So we are then, from these 35 months until the Soviets then, they adjust themselves, until the time when the fortified city then is set up. There is yet a period of time, but it's going to depend mostly of the African people. Amazingly, how much are the Africans then understanding the instructions and the layers thereof? Because they are going to be the very people pushing for the holy city. If you read the holy instructions, you find the layers. And then the sons of the violent ones, then they're going to lift, or they're going to push forward then for the establishment of the vision. In order for them to understand in the importance of then pushing for the establishment of this vision, this means they understand the layers of the holy instructions. So then, we should have at least couple or more layers working at the same time. The first is then the initiation of Ukraine then joining up the Soviet Union. Then you have a period of time until it takes place. Then you have China and the linking up of the many systems in the world regarding then payments via telephones, payments via computer, making it easier for people to purchase. And then you have also the Africans learning these holy instructions, and as they do, as they become bound together via these holy instructions, when the time comes, then they will understand they must set up this vision. And the indication is, it goes so far as they themselves starting these. Now, as far as the level of their involvement, it's not explained. But those who are then involved with the layers and they do understand, then those who do understand, in a normal understanding, they simply lead. So then, you find in the other verses then explaining then what's going on with the fortified city, and then skirmishes going on with the kingdom of the south. Then you understand the movements of armies again, as far as we can understand from Egypt, and then the joining up with the Soviet Union, and then coming down and then organizing. However, it won't be this easy, or this very easily way of saying it. It's not only this goes there and this do this and this do the other and then comes down. It's not this way. But it shows many skirmishes going on at the same time. And a lot of it is related with the conflicts, war. And because the Africans are the most people who do understand what it means, hardship and wars and conflict, then we understand why this establishment of division is done by the very people who are in the midst of this entire situation of skirmishes. But until then, they must understand every layer of the holy instructions. I'm not talking about only the Torah. I'm not talking about only the holy instructions as the 5 Megillas of Moses. Those are the basis. When we hear layers of understanding, you can imagine already the Torah as the basis. Because if we don't understand the basis, then we can't understand prophecy. So the Torah is absolutely the base or the structure of the entire understanding. Then comes the prophets. Comes then the writings. And these Africans, as we can understand from the holy instructions, are the very people who are absolutely wisely in tune with these layers and then promoting the establishment of the vision precisely found on verse 1:5 of the 11th chapter. So then, lots of situations going on. What we can understand for sure is a movement in the African continent, as then the holy instructions being opened and they understanding every section of it and then moving together in the spirit so they understand their position when the time comes. So please stay tuned, much more coming up.